thank you everyone who is here today or watching remotely. As a disclaimer, I'm quarantining myself a little bit all the way down here because I feel rather deathly ill. So just I think I sound okay, which is good, but just bear with me if that becomes an issue, which it shouldn't. So, as the title indicates, increasing participation and engagement with VoiceThread. So what I will do is give a brief rationale for why I use VoiceThread and why I think it's a good tool, and then I'll explain what it is and show a couple of examples, go over some affordances, some constraints, and that's pretty much it. So a little bit on the front end, and I want to have time to actually go through the examples themselves. As for the rationale of using VoiceThread, I sort of found myself writing these out and said, well, let's just put Chickering and Gamson straight up here, right? So this is, for almost 30 years, this is what we want out of, or what we know is good practice in undergraduate education. That's what we try to do in all of our classes. And some of these are more difficult than others, you know, particularly the first two, contact between students and faculty and students, especially in a classroom setting. Others up here are a little bit easier to accomplish. But those first two are hard when a lot of our classes look like this, right? So in an actual classroom environment that has a couple hundred students in it, while we all know that we want to have classrooms that are active learning environments, that's not always possible. While in the English department our classes don't look like this, the cap is generally about 30 or even 20 for the writing classes, it's still not entirely feasible to have like 100% participation in a whole discussion. You know, anybody can be kind of quiet in even the smallest classrooms. And anytime we're lecturing, not unlike right now, it's a pretty passive learning environment. So this we know. For 3 years, I've taught blended learning, taught in a blended learning format, which I've grown to love. And I'm happy to talk about that as well. But of course, one of the, in most blended formats, you're reducing physical face-to-face contact, which, you know, the immediate fear, especially for those of us who teach small classes, in the small writing classes, is that there's going to be a potential reduction in the classroom community. So while I'm a strong proponent in the blended model, it took me about 3 semesters to really figure out how best to continue that nice, strong learning community, which is really critical for something like teaching and working with young writers. So my blended days, my online days, some of them are asynchronous, where students kind of log on and there's a list of stuff to do. And some of them are synchronous. I do use Adobe Connect a lot, and I like that. But this is more about asynchronous days and how to increase student engagement and participation in an asynchronous environment. So the solution that I found through a Sloan C workshop, you know, those 1 week long workshops, which I think are fabulous. And I think I found this through the workshop that was like alternatives to PowerPoint, but the primary title was much more like, it was meaner to PowerPoint. I don't remember what it was. It was like PowerPointless or something. So we went over a few tools in this course. One of them was probably Prezi, and one of them was VoiceThread. And it is what you see on the screen. Well, first, I use this on asynchronous days. I'm very structured when it comes to how I divide what's happening in class and what's happening for homework and what's happening in the online class and what's happening for homework, et cetera. So anytime I'm developing an asynchronous online day, I want to encourage student-to-student interaction as I do in my face-to-face classes, and teacher-to-student interaction as well. I'm not saying that's the only way to do it at all. There are a million things that can happen and can happen successfully on an online asynchronous class. This is what I like to do, and now my students sort of know that it's coming. So most asynchronous days, I put a voice thread together, which is super fast to do. And students get used to it, and some of them even like it. So interactive PowerPoint, all these things. I'll just show you an example in a second. So students can see and hear me, and this nice student-to-instructor contact, and students can hear each other. These we'll hear from these guys in a moment, and can actually interact with the content as well. So one of the big advantages to me as a writing instructor is instead of a discussion board where at best students are toggling between, like here's the text over here and then they're writing about it, I can zoom in and just take a paragraph or a summary like this, and students can work with it as they're looking at it. When he was listening to Carl, he could see what Carl had, like literally see what Carl had to say about this particular summary. So those are advantages I like. I teach visual rhetoric as well, so later in the semester we look at like infographics or advertisements together or something like that. So this translates very well for anybody who's teaching anything visual, I suppose. After the examples, I'll talk a little bit more about the kinds of files that VoiceThread supports. In the example I'm about to show, from which this is an excerpt from, this was my very first VoiceThread of this semester. This is just a couple of weeks ago. So I will show you how I explain it to students. And what's happening here, this is a Wednesday, day 4. So the Monday, day 3, we were in a face-to-face class and groups composed a summary together. So the very first writing assignment is an individual summary, so to practice that, they read Carr or Maurer, they wrote a group summary in class, and then I took them all, put them up here in VoiceThread on 5 different slides, and they went in and reviewed each other. So pretty public way of looking at student work.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
I'm a little confused. So the writing assignments were done, there's one group assignment and there's 5 groups in the class, or there's 5 people in a group and each one does an individual assignment?
There are 5 groups in the class, so about 3 or 4 students per group, and there are 5 summaries. Yeah, 5 groups. Yes, and in fact, I can, let's see, yeah, this is it right here. So I can go through and I'll pause on the instruction slides, which might make that a little bit more clear. So here I will go through what VoiceThread is and then explain the activity. And I think that this works, and if it doesn't, I have it open in another tab. So.
Hey everybody, welcome to the first VoiceThread of the semester. Over the next few slides, I'm going to show you what VoiceThread is and how to use it and what to do for today's activity. So VoiceThread is like a cross between a discussion board and a narrated PowerPoint, essentially. As you're probably beginning to notice, when you move through the slides, each slide will have comments attached to it. So unlike a video lecture where you start playing and it's continuous, VoiceThreads are cool because each slide acts as its own unit with its own comments. And what you will do in a few moments is you will add your own comments to the group summaries. So we'll get to that in a second. If you want to stop the presentation and skip around, you can do that. In the lower right, you'll see a couple of squares.
I'm just going to skip ahead.
So let's go over how to use VoiceThread. There are a lot of bullet items on this slide, but it's pretty easy to use. I'm going to go through this as quickly as possible, and of course, if you need to back up and review, you can do so at any time. So what I would like you to do is add audio comments to a couple of slides. You could also add video comments if you would like to. That'd be cool, but audio comments are fine. And the way that you do that, if you look down here, let's see, if you look down in this general direction, you'll see a plus sign. And when you click that,
well, that would pause it, but
buttons, icons will pop up, and there are several on there. The one in the middle is the one that I want you to use. It's the microphone icon. There's also a video camera icon, which is of course the one that I'm using, and there's a text icon as well. I'm asking you to add your voice and not to use the text one unless you like lose your voice or something. Just, I'm asking you to talk. Another thing that is down there that you'll notice, when you won't see it now, but when you are in comment mode, when you start adding comments, there.
I'm not going to try to do it, but were I to press one of these buttons, some pens would show up. So that's what's going on there.
So the activity is pretty simple. You're going to read all 4 summaries, I guess. You wrote one of them, so read the other 4 summaries, and then choose 2 to respond to. You're going to respond to a summary of the article that you also read and summarized, and then respond to one of the summaries of the article that you did not read. A couple of quick things. I'd like you to do your best to distribute your comments evenly. So if you're responding to one of the car summaries and the first group already has 15 comments, then move to either the second one or the third one. So I'd like by the end for every group to have received approximately the same number of comments. Just do your best. And the other thing, the next 2 slides, I'll go over like specific questions to
Et cetera, et cetera. So I go through all of this for the article you also read. I gave them specific instructions, most of them, including things like use the drawing tool and respond to each other all the way through, right? So any of us, probably all of us who are familiar with discussion boards can be brilliant when designed well, and they can be a disaster if they're designed poorly. For this, and actually some of my discussion board experience, I guess, you just witnessed in the previous slide where I said just distribute your comments evenly, right? So don't everybody respond to the first one, but I also, and I've done it, but I don't do it anymore. I don't like assigning like these 5 students, you have to respond to summary 1, and the next 5 you have to respond to summary number 2. Where possible, I like to give students choice. In at least, even in something small like this. So another thing that I ask students to do is to reference each other by name. So if you come in and you're like the 3rd or 4th person in there, listen to each other so that you're not repetitive, a common discussion board thing if you don't tell them otherwise. So listen to each other and reference each other by name. Again, this is only the 2nd week of class in a blended class, so anything that I can do to encourage learning each other's names is a good thing. So I'll just kind of go through a couple so we can hear student comments, and then I have another one if we need to see it. I'm not really sure that we need to, so I'll just go through a couple of these.
Hi guys, my name is Carl. So after I read this summary, the main point seems to be that reading online causes users to skim, and it also diminishes their ability to interpret text. But there were quite a bit of confusing parts that stood out to me. In the beginning, this group wrote Carr in to inform his audience that cognition can be altered by reading online, and then they continue with Carr continues his argument. But at this point, we don't really know what Carr's argument actually is. We just know that Carr wants to inform his audience that cognition can be altered, but we don't know exactly how cognition is altered. It could be positive or it could be negative. We don't know.
Fair enough.
Hey, this is Dylan Taylor. I read the same article, but I was in group 2. I think you guys did a really good job with the summary, and I think you conveyed the meat of Carr's argument really well. One thing I thought you guys did particularly well was indicating Carr's method of conveying his point, i.e. the does of the does say analysis. So you talked about how he used shock value. You talked about how he included his own personal experience, and you talked about the historical references he used. So I think you did a really good job with that. I also think you guys did a really good job introducing Carr, specifically letting the reader know where the article was published and what kind of writer Carr is. The summary was great, but I have to say I did find the last couple of sentences fairly confusing, particularly the last concluding sentence. It seemed like your last sentence was more of an analysis of the Google example that you used in the previous sentence, than an actual conclusion. I also think Carr's overall argument was more broad than just the effects of efficiency algorithms. I think he was more arguing that it was both the increased dependency on the internet as well as the flood of information received that is changing the way we think. I also think it probably would have been good to include the study from a university.
Okay, I'll just stop here. There's somebody on this slide who gently took this group to task on the way that they talked about Space Odyssey. And I thought that it was Dylan, but it wasn't. I was just going to play that so everybody in the room would know that yes, at least one of my students has seen the movie and corrected what's happening over here. But I think we get the idea. So 3 groups, the prior weekend, 3 groups, about 2/3, 3/5 of the class read the Carr article. And so here are the 3 Carr summaries, and then the other guys read Marr, who sort of takes the opposing view from Carr to an extent. And then at the end, I always do something like this, return to this, listen to the comments on your own summary, this is what you're doing this weekend, and this is where we're going. So there's like a little wrap-up slide at the end.
All right, so now that you have completed your first VoiceThread,
et cetera, et cetera. All right. So that's that. I don't really think that we need to go further than that. I'll go back here and see if I address any questions that are about to come up, and then yeah. So a couple of additional benefits include easy integration into Elms. So it can be used as it can be added to Elms as a possible external tool, and it's super easy. I had my own account with VoiceThread prior to the Elms integration in our department, and which was fine. That works just as well. But this one, when it's integrated into your class, then students automatically have access, and you don't need to deal with external passwords. It's also a great, easy entry to video lectures if that's something that you do or that's on your horizon and you don't want to jump into like Camtasia. VoiceThread can be used, as you can see, it's just a narrated PowerPoint, and because you're adding comments to each slide and you can delete them easily, the time to create one of these is probably a 10th of what it would, maybe a 20th of what it would be to actually make a video lecture. And of course, multiple ways to respond. Some of my VoiceThreads, I really emphasize the audio thing, because of course that's what I'm trying to do. It's another way for students to learn each other's names. It's nice to hear from everybody. And I've had a couple of weeks where, for whatever reason, the first student wrote their comments as a text, and then like everybody did. So I'm very clear about that. And more and more students are doing video. I haven't seen any yet this semester, but I had a couple last semester, and more students are just naturally uploading their pictures. It's just really fascinating to me how normal it is for students to share so much of themselves. The drawbacks, are right here. So, and there are a couple of other ones, but I can't help but just say or admit that yes, this is really expensive. Or it would be really expensive if the entire university bought it, which would be great. But I recently read a couple of Lowe's letters, and so I'm sure this is not really the high priority for us. So at the department level even, it's $1,000. I guess depending on what department you're from, that's worth it. We got it, the English department. We don't have a lot of money, but we got it. Although I still think there's a limit to instructors. I think it's only 20 of us who can use it, which is too bad. So that's $1,000. The individual license, as I said earlier, I used it. I just bought it. I immediately thought that it was valuable, and I used it. And what happens with that license is that you get 100 student accounts, but you can just delete them at the end of the semester and put your new students on there. It's fine. And the old voice threads with your old students' comments still exist. They're still out there if you wanted to show something on a day like this. Of course, the drawback there is, and you're manually entering everybody in and making up some fake password, and students might have some more tech problems, but it works just fine. So that could be worse, I guess. I don't know. And I think that, I don't know about the department, but I think that the 100 is annual, so it's for a year. Other drawbacks, let's see. You can upload Word documents, and that works fine. You can upload PowerPoints, that works brilliantly. You can upload pictures that you own or have the right to use, that works very well. You cannot use Prezis. It just doesn't work. They don't have a relationship with Prezi, and it troubles me. But you just sort of have to get over it. And you can do video, but you can't just bring over anything from YouTube. So, because VoiceThread wisely cares about copyright sorts of things, and they want to make sure that like you own it from your own computer. So they're like that about images and videos. But there's still a lot that you can do with it, and it's super easy to use. My own students said this. I didn't even prompt them. This was just like on their random like end of semester student evaluations, the ones that I design and give, and I asked about class activities, I think. So lots of discussion board, video lecture feedback, and then VoiceThread. Nice break from all of that writing that we have to do in this writing class. We certainly do a lot of writing. By the end of the semester, my students produce about 70 pages of revised work. So maybe I sympathize a little bit with that student. Like, yes, we can take a break. Guess what? I recently got an email from VoiceThread, from their blog, and they are offering some free workshops. Very cool. So that's a very tiny URL down there, but if you just go to blog.voicethread.com or VoiceThread, Google VoiceThread free workshops. I can try to make that a little bit bigger. Boom, if you want to write that down. So creating a basic VoiceThread, good place to start. It's after spring break, it's a month away. It's a Wednesday night. And getting into fancy stuff like groups and sharing, VoiceThread in your LMS. That's going to be up to your department or your program. It can happen, and more VoiceThread in your LMS. So I thought this was serendipitous that I received this email recently, and could share this with you. So VoiceThread loves us. They love UMD. I don't know if it's the owner or co-owner, somebody very, very high up there. His daughter is a UMD alum, so very happy to work with us. And when you kind of like move around the VoiceThread digital presence, digital footprint, you'll immediately see like, oh, well, Penn State uses this, and they've been using it for years. They kind of show off all of the different universities who've been using this. And I like it. Again, for my purposes, you can see how I use it to work with sort of the micro-level student writing. I get to hear my students talk about like action verbs and the does-says analysis, which is really lovely. And also, of course, for visual rhetoric and anything visual, I can see how this would work for lots of different things, including like math problems and things like that, because you could write on it directly on the slide. I think that's all I have. Pretty sure that's it. I guess I'll leave that one up. That's what I do in my class. So what questions do you have that I can, yes?
So do you grade the VoiceThreads?
They're part of participation. So they're graded as I would their participation in a face-to-face class. Like if you don't do it at all, then that's a deduction. But really, it's not, like nobody even fails for not doing the VoiceThread, right? It's just class participation. Everybody knows that they're supposed to, and they might get docked. Like if there are 3 activities that day, that would be, like they got a 7 out of 10 if they did the other activities as part of class participation, which only accounts for so much of the overall grade. So the short answer is no. And even the way that we do it, when all is said and done, it's minuscule in the overall grade, but they still do it. Like, most of them do. I'll get a couple of people who forget, but most of them do it.
So do you have to hand go through and check? So I'm wondering if sort of you kind of go like, did this person participate, did this person participate, did this person participate?
I get an email from VoiceThread who gives me a summary, which is I don't remember, no, I got it before I had the LMS integration. So I don't have to, but I sort of look at that, and then I'll go back in to quickly look for the students that weren't on the summary in case I missed one or something. I like to listen to them all. I don't always. I can't. And my TAs, I have TAs. They're the leads on participation. So it's actually they're the ones who are going through. I work with TAs, so it's one of the benefits. But I do like listening to them all, and I try to, even if I'm not the one actually like grading. There might be a free version. I would love to believe that there's a free version.
I think for education you can get an account, but it's pretty limited. Yeah, you want to do the teacher thing.
Oh, right.
Because it's public, I think, if you
Yes.
don't have a teacher account.
That's right, and that's how we did them when we were in that Sloan workshop. Like, we were able to make our own VoiceThread, but it was immediately public, as though we had just made a YouTube video and then like anybody could find it. When you have an educator's license, I think that's what I meant by individual $100. That was like an educator's license. You have the option of making it public for the whole world, which I never do. And you have the option of keeping it tightly locked down by password, or sharing it by anybody who has the link. Again, it's another advantage of if your program or department is generous or has the funds. When it's integrated directly into your LMS, it's by default a private VoiceThread, but students don't need to deal with passwords because they just go right in there through Elms. So yes, you can test it out in the free domain, and whatever you create will be out there for the world to see. But at least you can experiment with it without paying for it. Yeah.
I'm just curious, how many students do you have in this class?
19.
Oh, that's manageable size.
Yes, it's a manageable size. You can also take, so I have a couple of sections, I have 3. So I'll make the VoiceThread and then just copy it. Like, this will be BLO1s, this will be BLO2s, and this will be BLO3s, which I could just as easily do that for groups. So if I had one class of 100, I could just make up 5, or however many, I guess 5, 5 different groups and assign students to groups. So you could do it like that. So that, yeah, 100 people on a VoiceThread, well, who knows? I don't work with 100-person classrooms, so I'm sure there are a million different ways of doing it. But just the fact that you can just make it once and copy it to a bunch of different groups makes that fairly easy.
Is that account? I'm getting confused between like accounts. When you say VoiceThread, is that a VoiceThread account? So if you're using 30 of those licenses in one class, is that how that works? I'm not sure.
Right.
So what is the integration? Like, if it's integrated now on Canvas, do the students log in through UMD? Does it work like that?
Yeah, if you get a department or university license, all that account and numbers thing disappears. So you can have students just, like none of that matters anymore as far as how many accounts that you have and deleting and adding students. So yeah, when you have it and it's integrated into your Elm space, it will look like this. If I wanted to, this is like a fake. If I wanted to add a new VoiceThread, it's just right here. And then I would figure out which one I wanted to use. Is this going to be fast for us? Yeah. So, yeah, right now I only have 2 in here. So students, when they access this, they see, you know, getting students to go to the modules is always a bit of a fight. Everything is in modules, and they don't really always quite get there.
Do they find it easy to catch on and do it?
To do the VoiceThread?
Yeah.
Yeah, they do. That first
I would think
slide,
so.
yeah, they're so, and I explain it on that first slide, like this is how you use it, and then they get there, and it's fine. And some of them will have problems, but you know, that sort of happens. But they pretty much figure it out. So from the student view, they click on this, and then it just loads in a new window. So anybody who's associated with my course, that would include observers or course designers, or anybody else, has full access to any of these. And I no longer need to worry about this stuff as the third bullet item. That's just gone, which is great. And I hope we renew this license. Apparently we did for this year, so we'll see, because it works out really well. Did that answer your question?
You guys have 20 people using it now in English? And in the languages we were interested, and then we only had one person, so we couldn't like jump in on your account. So.
Oh, I think I remember this from Lauren Friedman. I think I remember
Yeah, because I couldn't get. I was like, please just try it.
Please, it's
I
awesome.
didn't really have a concrete idea of using it. I mean, one of our professors, she actually did use it, like the instructor license, and she loved it. And I think for languages it would be great, but then the licensing was an issue. So.
It's a thing. Yeah.
But campus, if campus adopts it.
Wouldn't that be great? That's what I would love. It's so perfect. It's so perfect.
Proposals that just went out.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, let's put it on there. Get on that, Mary.
Get on that, Mary.
Just get on that. I obviously I think it's a beautiful tool. We increased the number of instructors who are blended instructors between last spring and this fall, which suggests that we have at least 20 instructors who are using it in our department. And so primarily it's those of us in academic and professional writing who are using this, though it work just as well for literature and other writing classes. Tips for creating an assignment. So a lot of, especially my first few VoiceThreads, I'd say that a lot of them are still drawn from the discussion board model. So something that I would have created a discussion board around. I can see if that makes sense for a VoiceThread or if it works better for a discussion board. So if we're looking at entire sample papers, that still makes much more sense on a discussion board. But now I can extract a paragraph and put it right on here. And look at some nice micro level details, which tend to be glossed over when you're looking at a 6-page paper. Also, like I know for document design, resumes, cover letters, I know a lot of my PWP colleagues use VoiceThread for that, so people can point to this is the wrong font or margins or whatever they're looking at. Possibilities are endless. Workshopping student work, again, like I work with primarily freshmen, at least in academic writing, and the idea of sharing work can be frightening to some. So this first assignment is kind of, well, it's a group project, so it's not just your individual work. And yes, we share things in this class, and your work will be shared, and we will talk about it, and you will get constructive criticism and positive feedback on everything that you do. So I like this as kind of it might be a harsh icebreaker, it might be pretty cold for some students who are really apprehensive about sharing their writing, but it certainly sets the tone, like, this is this class. It's active, we're gonna hear you, we're gonna look at your work closely, and it's gonna be okay. It really is. So.
It's nice too. I know when the students respond, like they can have an image and then their voice, because the language teacher that used it, she had students do like a "this I know is true" type reading of their work, and so I mean I was like crying listening to them all because they had these amazing stories, but it was all centered around that theme. Like she did one, and then they all kind of chimed in, so it was really nice, and they could put a picture in and have their voice. And they didn't use video, but it was really
but just hearing those sorts of stories. I'll go briefly to courses and groups. Far too many. We'll go to this one. I love Canvas. I don't know why I still see like my courses from 2013, right? Like I mean, it's within the past 3 semesters, fine, but it's a lot. So in here, did you do modules? I'm also the blended learning coordinator for the academic writing program, and this is our Elm space, discussion boards, Adobe Connect, VoiceThread. I practice VoiceThread. VoiceThread overview and examples. Let's see if this is what I mean. It probably is. I just want to see if I can find her name. Yes, the award-winning VoiceThread that inspired me, Michelle Pacansky-Brock. I was crying too as I watched hers, and she's kind of like the queen of VoiceThread nationwide. She's written a book. I think it's a digital book. I think it's self-published. Doesn't matter. She's written a book. She appears at like EdTech conferences and talks about VoiceThread. She's the queen, and she teaches art history, I believe, and she has examples of her VoiceThreads. This is one of them. It won a Sloan Award. She's great. She even has a YouTube channel. So if you find her name, it's Pacansky Brock and VoiceThread, you'll find all sorts of things. And then there are those workshops. Yes?
You mentioned earlier that this is a good alternative tool for people who may be new to video lecturing.
Yes.
You can see how that would definitely be the case. If you were to use it primarily as a video lecture tool rather than necessarily as an interactive tool, is it possible to turn off the options for students to participate? Essentially take the thread out of VoiceThread.
I don't know.
Okay.
I do not know. Yeah, I don't know. My TAs have made a couple of these. It's great for like MLA citations. If we bothered to make a slide about it, you best get it right. And I think even as when I would have been a viewer watching their VoiceThread, and I think I could still make comments. I don't know that there's a way, but there could be. There could be. Their help area and their response time is really good. So it's probably on their help page somewhere.
In that case, you may not need to use VoiceThread for that purpose.
Right.
You can choose another tool.
I just tweeted a great list of 15 tools for screencasting. Not Lyra, Hilliard. But I just found it like maybe an hour before this. And sort of the familiar heavy hitters are on there, but there were a couple of new ones that I hadn't heard of that were free. I wonder. So yeah, could bring that up too. But cool screencasting options. There's more than Jing and Camtasia. There's more than TechSmith. So.
What's your Twitter handle? So
Lyra Hilliard. It's right over here. There's not that many slides on here. I thought this wouldn't be so annoying. There we go. There we are.
We're commenting on your Prezi because like usually when I think that's the best Prezi that I've experienced because I don't feel ill watching it.
Oh my gosh! Thank you. I am humbled. I'm truly humbled.
I guess that's the key, not to zoom. Yeah.
Oh yeah, with the zoom in and the spinning and the yeah, they can be. I just think that they're pretty, and I'm pretty visual. But now, I mean, the more that I've made, and in the first few Prezis that I made, it's definitely sort of choppy, and it takes some getting used to. But now I'm just very familiar with it and have figured out sort of the tips and tricks of creating content pretty quickly. So, and this one only had a few slides, and it was like networking and social. That'd be appropriate. Even my partner, who himself, he calls himself the king of PowerPoint, and he really is, because he's been science, he's been doing it forever. He's even impressed with Prezi, and that's saying a lot. So, like, wow, you can do that? I said, yeah, it's cool. Anyway, so I hope that works out for you. And I hope that the more of us that want to use VoiceThread, maybe we can convince the university to just buy it for campus because it's so useful.
Proposals and people are looking, but I mean that for the big campus, like that would have to come from like a campus level group to push for that tool, because there's a lot of integrations with campus that I think would be really cool, like Zaption and VoiceThread, and they cost bucks, but I think for that thing that Marcio sent out for using student tech fee monies, I'd rather see it go into something like this where you can do innovative things with it instead of like put computers in a place on campus
That no one will
That's
use.
how they usually
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's so good.
But I don't know what group would have to be a campus level group, it could be, or departments banning. Maybe in arts and humanities we should tell Kathy to push for
Oh, that's a good.
something like that.
That's yeah.
To see like from the whole arts and humanities group, if we can push for that for the campus level kind of thing to get. But I'll work on it from my end, and then if they get
Yeah, I can see what Jennifer and Patterson has any advice on that as well. So.
I'm sure like architecture would be a great tool for them. There's probably other schools
and in education, schools.
Definitely.
I mean, yeah, and even with what they're teaching teachers, this whole Common Core thing, a lot of the kids have to talk through how they get somewhere instead of writing it out. They have to be able to explain it. So that's a tool.
I would say it's useful for every subject, every discipline.
I think so.
Can I ask one more question about, like, technically? I saw that the students were able to underline sections of text while they were using sort of the voice component of it, and I was wondering, are there ways that they could, like, I was wondering if that was like that they were mousing underneath the text, or if there was a way to like type as they were talking and sort of leave something that was permanent there, you know what I mean? As opposed, because I could see how for students it might be difficult to go back, listen, and try to edit the document as they're listening to, like make the changes, as opposed to kind of like being able to have the voice but also leave like this section right here,
Right. Yeah, it's certainly an imperfect tool. Let's see if I can. I mean, escape. The fast answer to your question is no. You can't really do anything cool. So, and because this is what it looks like.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Right? But there's no like.
I like it.
But there's no real text function. And what is nice is that, yes, the marks themselves only last for 5 or 6 seconds, and they start to fade away, so that when the next person comes in, they're not like dealing with huge marked up text already. All right, we'll just go ahead and stop. Right. And then it's all you need to do is hit cancel, and then that just disappeared. So if you want to delete your thing, that's fine. What else was I going to? So you can add text comments, but I don't even know that you can really link that to a specific part of the text. So that is like you couldn't really use that in an annotated way, unfortunately. So not yet.
You do private VoiceThreads, like if you had a student and you wanted to give feedback, kind of like what you would do in a screen recording software. If you had their item and then you could send it to them individually to play, that would be private.
Yeah, we've talked about that. It would require setting up a new VoiceThread with just you and that student, but that wouldn't be hard. That you could. And I think that students themselves, we've looked into this. I think that students themselves, when everything is integrated into an LMS, they can create their own VoiceThreads if they want to like upload their draft or something. Then that could work. It's not something that I've done in my classes, so I can't speak to it authoritatively. Yeah.
Is there a limit on how many
Not that I know of, because they've never done it, and so I don't think so. And I'm pretty sure that it can happen, but I guess I would leave a window of possibility that I'm completely lying and that students can't create them at all. But I think that they can. They just haven't yet. I don't know. Sorry.
I can see this utility as being like practicing group project presentations and
Yeah.
things like that. Like,
Yeah.
give it online first, and then when you do it in person, you guys are going to be much more polished because you've had all of the feedback from the course.
That is exactly what I'm thinking.
Oh, that's right. That's nice. Oh, I like that. Group projects. Uh-huh.
But it doesn't integrate with the grade book yet, right?
No.
So you
Yeah.
can see it as an assignment to assign a VoiceThread to.
No, but you can, I mean, I do this all the time. My darling freshman, you know, like I do this all the time where, and I actually, I do mean that literally, because I've been teaching freshmen for 7 years, and I imagine I will do that for the rest of my life because I love it so much. I really do. So I will often, you know, as far as stuff that doesn't show up as an assignment, I'll just, you know, copy the whole thing and make an ungraded assignment out of it so that the entire week 3 to-do list pops up in their Elms thing. So you could do that with a VoiceThread as well. Just like VoiceThread assignment, it's worth 100 points, even though it's not really, you know, points, right? Like, now I put points on everything, even though it does not, everything's weighted, it doesn't matter. Anyway, but they do it. Anyway, so it's, so in that sense, you could go through SpeedGrader with a VoiceThread if you set it up like that, and you could put their 100 points, 1,000 points in pretty easily.
But then they wouldn't be able to see each other's. If they submit it as an assignment, the VoiceThread, would
Oh,
they be
right.
able to see each other's?
No. Okay, so these are things that could be worked out. Yeah.
They're in the same platform, VoiceThread, right?
Right, if they submitted it as an assignment, it would be an isolated thing. I'm sure there are ways. Or there's the argument for submit everything to me and I will upload it for you so that we can see everybody's, kind of like I did for the summaries. They were composed in Google Docs and I just grabbed them. So for a group project, maybe they start in Google Docs and then I grab them all, but instead of putting them into one VoiceThread, I would have 5 different VoiceThreads and each group would just work in their group 2 VoiceThread. That would be a way through.
You can embed VoiceThread to any page, right?
So,
I think so. It's a
Like
link.
on the content page?
Just a link.
It is just a link. It just matters. The thing to figure out for yourself is if you care, that anybody with that link can open it. So if your student has a malicious roommate and sees that link open or something, you know, I do it all the time for ease of access. Like I just put the link right on there. So the short answer is yes, you can embed links right on here. I instruct students to go to modules to find it because if they go through here in my class, because it's integrated, they won't have any password weirdness. And sometimes there are weird glitchy things that happen if they just go to the link.
Not embed links, but embed the whole VoiceThread in a page.
Oh, sorry.
You know, if you could do that.
Maybe. I want to go to My Voice.
It looks weird though.
Oh. Well, okay, so that was an export thing. I don't know. I mean, maybe it's possible, but it looks weird and maybe it's not beautiful yet. Maybe it's not as clean as a YouTube video. However, I do remember the days when embedding a YouTube video was clunky and ugly too. So, and now it's seamless.
can you have you tried the Vimeo? Using Vimeo and stuff?
I'm familiar with Vimeo and I haven't used it, but they're pretty. But
For their, you can't embed YouTube, I'm wondering if you can embed Vimeo, because I know a lot of the students use Vimeo for their video assignments, I was wondering.
Right, because they're private.
I can look that up.
Yeah, I don't know.
You can embed Vimeo.
You can embed Vimeo?
Where? Yeah.
It's the same
And use it.
option.
Not in the Canvas. Remember how they were talking about you can use this VoiceThreads for video?
Oh, they wanted
their own content.
maybe voice.
Oh.
content.
Right, got it. I understand now. Embedding a Vimeo into a voice thread. I see. Maybe. I think they need to see the file from your computer as proof that you own it. I think that's the issue. But you may be able to. You may be able to.
I'm thinking of another professor who has like a problem where this would be really useful, I think. But the integration with the gradebook is really the necessary, the missing piece to make it just seamless and super easy.
Right. Wow. Thanks for an awesome conversation. This was a pleasure to be here. Yeah, thank you so much. This was really fun.